Business Matters, presented by the Guamanian Magazine.
The Guam Memorial Hospital should get a much-needed $45 million cash infusion this week, with about half the money going to pay off overdue vendor bills. The money is from the refinancing of certain Section 30 bonds. GEDA Administrator Jay Rojas was part of the team led by the governor that met with some 50 different investor groups in New York to pitch a $245 million bond refinance package.
So in the end, what happened is we actually ended up borrowing only $236 million, which still gives us the yield that we need and the monies that are required. And we actually ended up with our lowest interest rate ever. Our 2046 bonds were closing in at 2.98%, which is less than 3%, which has never happened in a long-term maturity that we've had on the island. And our all-in true interest cost is actually down to 3.32%. And that actually is the lowest Guam's ever had in any general obligation bond.
So while it may be a good deal, Rojas acknowledges it is still debt, and there are plenty of critics who argue against running up the tab for the next generation to pay.
Granted, this debt does come through, but as in any business, the debt is really there to be, the debt is really necessary for us to be able to leverage what we have and are going to get to be able to progress in the future. So debt is not exactly always a bad thing. It's good to be able to get us the money that we need right now, provided that we can pay for it in the future.
He says one of the challenges they face with the bond refinancing was dealing with fallout from the Puerto Rico credit crisis. Congress passed a bailout measure in July called PROMESA that, among other things, establishes a financial oversight board to help the San Juan government restructure its debt. The law also extends that option to fellow territories like Guam. But Rojas says they were able to reassure jittery investors, and in fact the bonds drew about $1.75 billion in orders for the $245 million they were seeking.
And our underwriters essentially go through and assign which bonds to which investors to kind of go from there. One investor in particular bought the entire amount. Another investor bought 80% of them. So this session that we had with these meetings with these investors actually really worked to our benefit, because they saw how secure these are, as well as the financial stability of the government itself.
Growing that stability is what Rojas says he hopes to focus on. That's the economic development that is part of his agency's title.
And when everyone thinks GEDA, they think bonds, they think QCs, and that's not what GEDA is about. What GEDA is also about is actually helping to spawn the growth of the small businesses that are out there. In the next coming months, we're going to be looking at a revolving loan program that we can open up to the small businesses that are out there that need a little extra help to be able to get over a hump. And those are just some opportunities that GEDA has out there to be able to help the local businesses that are here, not just the big guys that we normally are known for going after.
Still, those big guys remain vitally important for economic growth, and Rojas says they are always looking to attract more investment.
We essentially have two different types of investors. One, the investors that actually invest in Guam bonds and Guam paper. And we took care of that when we were in New York and actually did meet up with all of these investors that do normally do that. The second part is, looking at private investors and see what we can do about doing, building more infrastructure on Guam to kind of go from there. Some of the things that we're also taking a look at that are really important to us is trying to look at what other industries that we can to attract. So when I was actually out there, the governor and I met with what we call the Silicon Valley Leadership Group to look at technical companies that might be interested in coming out here, using some of the different features that Guam has, both geographically and politically, to be able to house a technical infrastructure here that can actually help to launch into the Asian markets for some of these companies.
The GEDA administrator says the next 5 years look very promising, especially as the military buildup ramps up.
There's going to be a lot of other industries that are going to be spawned around that. So there's direct impact and then there's indirect impact. And I think the indirect impact is really where we're going to see that growth. We're starting to see those investments. We're starting to see the impact as far as the indirect impact that's going to be had on Guam. So with that, that means a lot more growth for us. It means a lot more jobs, which is what really brings it down home.
For KOAM's Business Matters, I'm Nestor Lecanto.
Business Matters, presented by the Guamanian Magazine.